as you all know, for those of you that have taken the journey with me, tonight is the final stop on the Repeat After Me virtual book tour. And I have the humbling privilege to end tonight's tour officially right in the great city of New Orleans in the great state of Louisiana with my sister from another mister and my sister from another mother, Miss Mary D. Moran.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and God be before us, so let's go. Just want to start off by saying thank you so much for, I think, just being obedient to God, being obedient to Spirit, right? And me and you talk. First of all, we did start off as colleagues. Started off making that good trouble that the congressman
Lewis talks about. Boy, that good trouble, yes.
Really what attracted us to each other, right? Was that I was like, oh, okay, yeah, she make trouble. Like she and so it's been a beautiful journey. You know, we've had I've called you when I've been at my lowest. And I'm like, fam, I need some prayer. I don't see beyond this moment. I need some prayer. And you're like, cool, I got you. It's done. We'll stay on the phone for, 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
Because you're hitting me with the word and you digging me out of the hole that I done put myself in, right? So I'm so grateful for you. I'm grateful, I think, just for your creative nature, right? And for how, again, we have so much within us, and all of us don't necessarily use it or put those things to use. And so this idea of like, how do we, I grew up in the church, church kid, but this idea that, God comes in different forms and different, we having a conversation about nature, and I'm just like, that's where I see God the clearest. And you're like, hey, bet, and so I think, you are the God person that people need to meet today. That's so relevant, right? I think how you have put this book tour together, how you have adapted to the moment, right? And how you always adapt, whether it's in your design work, whether it's in how you preach, your communications, your digital work, right? Like you're a beast. And so, California has a real one. San Diego, I don't even know how San Diego came on the map, but San Diego has an absolute real one. And I am so grateful for you. I'm so grateful that you out there really just putting in work, and I'm sure everyone at St. John knows the value of the work that you've been putting in. And I'm encouraged by it. And so this is the very first time I have actually ever gone on a platform to talk about God, to talk about spirituality, and specifically how that has developed me as a leader. And so I am grateful for the opportunity, and let's go.
It's so huge because sometimes in this world, in these spaces, we go and we do, and it doesn't negate that what we're doing is ministry, but sometimes we don't sometimes just sit and get to just share our faith and get to just share our journey of development. So I'm excited. There was a whole nugget in itself, sister, whether you know it or not. And so I'm humbled to even again allow this opportunity. And I thank God that he's given me this vision and that he gave me the wherewithal to be obedient to that vision.
So I grew up in the church with my grandmother, and then, and have, I think different times because of either my politics or different things that were happening in my family, right? Whether that be drugs, domestic violence, obviously poverty, whatever it was that was happening and manifesting in my home and in my neighborhood, I was just like, there was a lot of doubt. And so I've had this relationship, but I've always kept true to understanding at a very young age, I learned the process of manifestation. And it has to do with affirmation. And so I absolutely love this book. Repeat After Me is a book about affirmations, is a book about life and speaking life. And so I'm so grateful for it. I will cherish this book and have, these Post-it notes and, all over my house, and I just drop them, and then, I pick them up, and then I get my best preacher voice on, and I'll be like, "But God," and then, start reading them, and then Greenleaf came back on. So,
yes.
So, yeah, I swear that I'm
in training. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But I'm more like Sophia with the little saints, yeah, and I think, when I sat with the book and was with the book, the biggest thing that I like right away, it was just speaking to me, right? One of the first things that I clearly remember popping out of the book was, God loves us so much that He's going to prepare you for what you're going to encounter on your journey. And who would have known that, this little girl from LA was going to be popping around I was moving and stuff and doing things, in other countries before getting to New Orleans. But that I would just be, for years, I pretty much lived in hotels because I was, from state to state. So yeah, I was just like, all of, perhaps even the bad, just prepared me for this moment, and it's a part of what makes me relevant in my leadership, but also, certain things that I think that are important, and values that are important, principles that are important in leadership and both in the work show up because of both my spiritual journey and my journey as a person, So I appreciate, just how you even open up the book. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely beautiful. And the idea that, I can hear your voice in the affirmations.
Yeah.
And which means I can hear my voice, right?
Yeah.
I was just talking about this the other day. Sometimes, these other books like, what is it? Faith Acts. That was, I can't remember what's your girl's name? Iyanla Vanzant.
Iyanla.
And these books around affirmations, and sometimes they're just so real, like, that book is in every house that I know. And right. So I know that Repeat After Me will be a book that is in every house that I know as well. And so, yeah.
I think that's a great introduction. One thing that I can applaud, Mary did not state this, but she just kind of alluded to it. She grew up out here in the West Coast. I think it's so phenomenal that we kind of switch places in a sense. Like now I'm out here doing my adult life out here in these West Coast streets that she's very familiar with. And her life and life's work has taken her to the South. And one thing that she said, the structure of the book is really interesting because I wanted it to be twofold. I wanted it to be, yes, something formalized and something structured for people to be able to follow, but I also wanted it to be personable, right? So that if you know me, you can hear me, right? You like this, I'm having a conversation with Shalai, right? And she has had a conversation with God, right? And I think sometimes we lose that, right? Because we're trying to be so formal and we're trying to be so structured and we're trying to be so polished. That there's just something to be said when, it's like sometimes you like, man, I heard my mom in my head. Or like, dang, I heard my sister. Like, I hear my sister right now. Like, every now and again, you need that voice, right? And you need that voice sometimes to be an audible voice, right? Beyond, this is the Spirit of God. No. This is my sister via the Spirit of God. Like, that's like right here. So important and critical as we go about this journey of destiny. And especially in your role as like a leader that have been across the world, that we don't get God's voice out of our head, right? Because that word, we read the word, we study the word, but with that word should some to also be God's voice. Like no matter what, even when I'm in sin, even when I'm making my mistakes, even when I'm being ratchet, I cannot get God's voice out of my head, right? And so I think that's powerful when you say just how the book, how what you gravitated towards when you open up the book. The beginning of the book is very personable, and it just starts out with like, how did we get here? How did I get here? And kind of mapping out that journey in a little bit before, like, here are these affirmations. And one thing you also said that I want to highlight, and you can have it, is this notion of, you said it's early on, understanding the power of manifestations. That is so powerful, because it does no good if we just have the word. It does us no good if we just have the voice of God, if we cannot manifest, if we cannot live out the life that has been written, if we cannot live out the life that's been promised, if we cannot live out the life that has been spoken, right? It does us no good. And so I think, moving past affirmation has to be understanding, I'm speaking this because at some point I'm believing that it will, has to, and shall come to pass. These are not just minuscule practices out of habit and or routine. I'm looking for something. I'm looking for these words to be spoken out of my mouth that clashes with time and the atmosphere, that will later produce a manifestation that will speak to the miracles of heaven that's already been predestined on my life. And so I think the fact that you package that is beautiful, because on your journey, it has to be more than just words being spoken. It has to be coupled with the belief in these words manifesting themselves, as what Pastor Ty said in our stop in Alabama. I'm not just speaking things into existence because they already exist. I'm speaking them into my experience.
I'm here. I think one of the things that when you said that, I was thinking, if this book is going to be in every house, and how are they going to know you, right? Because I'm like, when you said that, I was like, yeah, because you're my destiny coach, right? And so, like, the people will just need to know more about you, right? And so maybe through this, and maybe through podcasts, and maybe through other forms, right? Because the destiny coach, they need to know the destiny coach is this book, right? And the destiny coach, I can hear her in these affirmations.
Yeah, and that's interesting you say that. I feel like that's a question. I feel like that's a question, but that's a prophetic question, right? I think sometimes what's missing for me is the personal touch, right? And the personalization, and how critical it is. Because you're right, I wanted these words that when people pick it up, you're right. There are some that know me that will pick this book up, be like, this is Sean all day long. This is the Destiny Coach all day long. But then there are some that may be totally foreign to who I am and strangers to my work, that I still want that to embark a level of curiosity. Well, who is the author, right? Who is the person behind these words? And not so much that I get any vanity from it, but ultimately so that it starts a journey of self-identity, self-discovery, to say, who is this person that's so poignant, that's so like relatable, as you said, that's so relevant in these times, that that can possibly serve as my virtual mentor, or this model, right? Because I think that's something that's been missing. We're always looking, right, for a model or a template, or this person that's living this life that isn't too rigid, right? That isn't too structured and formalized. Like, I need somebody that messes up like me, that's loud like me, or not.
Truth be told, there's a lot of books on affirmations. There's a lot of value is actually in Sean, right? The value is actually that who the author is, who those words come from. Do you know that person? In both how they move and the fact that person can really be there and understand when you're in that hole, and I know this, right, from personal experience. And so to me, it's they really do need to get to know you, right? Because the value of this book to me was the words, yes, and the scripture, but more so like, man, this is Sean. Like, I get you, right? And I'm like, and that's real to me, right? I'll share mine in a second, but I mean, I can't even, I think even the punctuation, even all of that, I was just like, this is Sean. So, even certain affirmations about authenticity and, etc. I was just like, this is Sean all the way. And that's one of my favorites. It was really hard for me to pick one affirmation. I will say that. Because they were just all so good.
Let me ask you a question before we kind of go into the actual affirmation is, do you think that's important? Like, you're right. There are so many books around affirmation, speaking life, power, so many devotionals, period. And so that's intimidating to an author or someone that's being, that has been compelled to now write this, because the reality of it is like, okay, now how do I compete, right? Or what is the space that I'm to play in when there are so many well-known life coaches or so many well-known spiritual life? I'm just 36. Like, there's still a lot of life, I would believe, for me to live. And here's the message that I hope to, even though as I ask this in my head, I want to speak it to someone who may sometimes feel themselves at a crossroad of where do I fit, right? And it goes back to this authenticity piece, right? You as an individual have something to offer, whether or not in that category there's 10 more. Both you and I are community organizers by trade. You are one by heart. I'm not. I'm truly one by trade. And so even though we both played in those same spaces, our passions around the work and our lens and expertise around the work took us down two very different paths. And it doesn't necessarily mean that there was never room for both Mary and Sean. And that's why that authenticity piece is so pivotal, because I just believe in this season of creativity, there are so many who sometimes hold back on what they've been gifted and graced to do because they're looking at what's already out there and not believing that there is a space or a realm for their voice. And so you're literally speaking to the rationale behind the punctuations, or the choice of verbiage, right? Or how it's even mapped out, because how you compete, if you have to compete, because I don't necessarily call it a competition, but how you find your place is you find your voice.
Period.
And period. That voice, yes, that voice is exuded in how you write, in how you show up physically, how you present yourself, and that begins to be your brand. That begins to be the market that you hold on to, because no one else has your imprint. No one else has your blueprint. No one else has your voice. And so I don't care if it's 10 other businesses that's just like you. Guess what? It doesn't have your imprint. I don't care if I meet 100 other organizers. They're not Mary Moran. You can get every book of affirmations is not one that will carry the dialect and the tone of Sean. And for that, you as the person, as the creator or the creative mind, have to be okay with that and have to find a level of resolve in realizing I belong, A, and B, I belong to what we're saying tonight. And this is so interesting that you're going here tonight. Mary, I found my voice.
Period. And that's what I love. One of the affirmations that I love in the book is I don't debate my anointing. I was like, when I read that, I said, yo, that's straight fire, right? I don't debate my anointing. I display it, period, right? It's like who I am, and the work is in the courage and it to consistently display it, right? The work is in the the fire that you have. It's not to dim the fire, to bring the fire down. It's like, how do we keep this fire going, right? The actual work that every leader has to do. And for you, it's like, how do you consistently, as you move from self-publishing to these bigger publishing houses or distributions, whatever, right? For you to consistently remain in your voice, and for you to consistently remain in your sauce, right?
That's good. The fact you know the Paul, I'm trying not to say anything, but I just think there's somebody tonight that needs to hear that.
Yeah.
When you find your voice, and when you find your juice, and when you find your vibe, flow in it, because there's a grace and a favor that couples that. And something that you noted, sometimes you have to literally deny what may be bigger and better for genuineness. Right? Like, this is a great opportunity. This is a well-paid opportunity. This, but is it going to allow me to stay true to my voice?
Yeah. That's, I'm reminded by the example of just not too long ago, the Nigerian sister who turned down $1 million for that Netflix deal, right?
Yes.
Because she wanted more of her creative power, and so she went and probably took a different type of deal, but is at HBO doing her thing. Yes. So, you have to fight. Once you find the voice, you have to work on consistently having it and showing up in that voice, but then also fighting for that voice in that, like, there should be no barriers around that voice.
And I would argue that, because God, there's an affirmation in the book that there's an audience awaiting my arrival. And the reality of that really speaks to what we're saying tonight is, for every voice, there's an audience. There's a people, there's a community, there's a group, or there's one person that I'm called to that will know it's me by the sound, right? They're listening for a sound. Right? Which is why we can't get caught up in sometimes bigger and better and grand, because who I'm called to, my journey of destiny is linked to this sound, and the people that I sent,
I said, come on, frequency.
Listen, the
people on your frequency is going to be on that frequency.
They turning the dial because they waiting on that station to pop up, right? And if you're not found in that realm, in on dial, on tune, you will miss that encounter between the people that are called to that voice that needs you to be at that frequency. And it's so critical, because we live in a competitive state. We live in a competitive market. We live in a competitive society. And my heart goes out to young entrepreneurs, because there's just always a fight. And the reality of it is, you don't have to when you tap into who you are at your core. I am a living witness, even out here in these California streets. God will send you who's called to you.
Yes, absolutely. Every single time.
Period.
And sometimes, I can say for me, last August, I had a major clearing in my life. I'll talk to you about this.
Yeah.
Where God just said, in one swoop, done, it was just chopping, and it was people who had to come out. And, I'm a plant mom. And so I have, a ton of plants. And, that pruning needs to happen. That clearing needs to happen for new things to come up. And so I say that just because, yes, some people are your people. And there are other times you'll actually, some folks will, no longer be your people, right? Yeah. But I think always knowing, again, in the very steady and consistent way that God operates, is that you will always have people, right? That there will always be people drawn to you, and you will always be drawn to who you need to be drawn to. And so, the book is also about letting go of doubt for these affirmations and these scriptures that are true, right? And so I love that, because it's if you feel unsettled, if you feel anxious, if you feel And those are the, kind of better terms, but really it's like you feel played by somebody. You feel,
Yeah.
someone did you something, right? All of those feelings really is just like this book can get you to a place of like being grounded and centered and in knowing what's true. That, okay, cool, bye. What was one of the affirmations is like, all right, I'm waving, but all right.
Right.
so so yeah, it's a solid book. I really encourage everyone to it comes out when?
Tomorrow.
So
The
tomorrow
ebook drops
pre-order,
tomorrow.
get on the list, do what you need to do.
Yeah.
You need to download and really start the practice, and the practice is a beautiful practice. And so I'm just always in awe of your work is beautiful.
I appreciate you just said something I want you to expound upon a little bit, and that is these affirmations. More than anything, they are linked to life lessons. Right?
Yeah.
Some of this stuff you can't say and can't declare out your mouth unless you lived it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's also this notion of how critical it is for us, those of us that are called to audiences, or those of us that's called to a form of leadership. How critical is it to live out and speak out those lessons and turn those lessons that we've learned privately and or publicly into public classrooms so that others can gain from?
Yeah, it's critical, and you know when it's time to do it, right? For some people, they often wait until it's way over, right? Until
Yes.
to reflect, and then for other people, especially a lot of people who you see online, they're in process, right? And so they're external processors, and they're showing you the journey, and there's value in that also, and not knowing and unfolding, like, how is this actually going to work? But I think that's a part of for me, it's a part of my duty to share, to be transparent, to constantly demonstrate where I'm growing, because it's I'm less of a big audience person, and I know this is on Facebook, but for right now, I just feel like, oh, it's me and Sean,
Right.
and so it's critical, because I think that's how we all learn. That's wisdom. That's keeping wisdom. I feel like is almost it's not a sin, but it's a
disservice.
It's a disservice.
It's a disservice.
I think when you learn something, and a part of the rejoicing and celebrating that you're not in that place anymore is to actually be able to speak to it. And the way that that, like, you've had time for reflection is that you can actually speak to it, and that you can help others really understand what's happening. And so, there was various of these, I was like, oh yeah, I was there a year ago, or I'm cool off that one, or like, that was not for me in this season.
Right.
And so I appreciate that. But the one that I picked is definitely with me for the season.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, cool. So it says, not only can I have it all, but I can also handle it all. Let me get my weight up so I can read the scripture.
Good choice.
Psalm 16:5. You, Lord, are all I have. You give me all I need. My future is in your hands. I mean, listen, I can have it all, and I can handle it all. And actually, I've been really drawn to in this moment It's something so much bigger than me. So it actually does scare me. And it is about getting my weight up. So yeah, this one is like something I have to actually, work on every single day. And since I read it, it's been with me. But even the idea of, there's like, to me, 3 parts in this. But the idea of I can have it all is so big because we operate and we're taught to operate, especially as Black and brown people, from a place of lack, right? Not from a place of abundance.
Yes.
So the simple idea of I can have it all is already coming up and rubbing against, and many times crashing up against this other idea that you have, which is like, I just need to put my head down and just focus on what I have right now, because that's all I have. Or like we hold on like this to the things we have, when really, when we let go of that, so much more can come to you, right? So yes, the idea of I can have it all is, to me, it would get the first step for manifestation is being able to envision it, right? And being able to see it, and like, like being able to, have a more expansive view on things is just, it's a lot of work. And for me, it took years and years of therapy, years and years of, sitting in somebody's church, and years and years of, even when God was showing me the evidence, I needed more evidence. And I was like, wait, show me again, show me again, show me again. Where now I know that whatever I want, I could actually have. It's like, I don't need the evidence. I don't, need to have all the details. I just know because I know it's so, because I know I'm a king's kid, because I know it was promised to me. And I wouldn't have the desire for something. I wouldn't have the vision for something if it wasn't something that I could have and attain. Look, and I always like, period, because it's a reminder to me that period is the doubt and the questions and how it's going to happen. That's not for me to like have to think about all in that moment. It's like, I know I can have that. So
two things. One, we got a question. Go here first. That's a major mindset shift. It is. I can have it all. And then linking that with the question. So what is all?
What is all for me in this moment? Yeah. I've really been, I'm a city girl, I'm from the city. I'm a city kid. Grew up scared of mosquitoes, scared of bees, scared of like the country. The idea of the country was just like not something that I was feeling, right? I don't want no animals, all this stuff. And, but, my experience of understanding more of justice and freedom and the things that we really should be working towards, not just short term, but long term. And, thinking about things that I learned from my family, whether it be, working on coffee plantations, working, the fields, working the soil, knowing that like COVID brought something that was, it was a hard hit for me, just because I'm used to being on somebody's plane every 2 weeks. I was out, whether it was personal or professional. I was gone all the time. I was in somebody else's country. I was, on somebody's flight. I was out. And so the idea of like having to sit still was hard for me, and it brought a lot of anxiety. And I wasn't a hoarder like the people who were buying stacks and stacks of toilet paper and what else were the people buying?
Beans.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't buying no beans either. But but I was but I was deeply concerned. Like, you telling me I have to stand in line for 3 hours to go to Costco? You telling me there's a line outside of Whole Foods and Trader Joe's? You telling me there's no way that I can get to the products that I use, at Target or whatever, like I can't get to them? Like, that's scary to me. And so it really kind of started breaking down, just the idea of what I need. And it really made me, but even before that, I had a vision where I just felt like God was calling me to the soil. And I'm like, what I'm gonna do with the soil? I don't know, Lord, what you saying? But really it has been this idea of the Black and Brown Get Down, which is a part of the work that I do, and you all can follow on Instagram and on Facebook, the Black and Brown Get Down. That work, I was like, what do we need? And even thinking about, I've done so much work, so much research on the Great Migration and like different migration of Black and Brown people, from whether it be from different countries on the continent to different countries in the Caribbean and what we understand as the Americas. I was just, thinking about migration, thinking about all of these stories that connect us, and knowing, what people really feel, what feels relevant to them.
Yeah.
A lot of it is getting back to the soil, being able to feed yourself, right? Like, you're not free if you can't feed yourself. You're not, if you're not able to really build, in times of crisis. It's just so critical. It's so fundamental. It's so just basic. And so have been thinking about, what does it look like? And this is, actually the first time I've talked about it. To have farms, where our people can work the land. I done seen everybody's documentary on Black farming, and how we have like 1 and 2% of farmers in this country are Black, and also coming from California and knowing that going from LA to the Bay and the Bay to LA and driving past the fields and seeing our people, Black and Brown people, Filipinos, Mexican, Black people, like working the farms and pulling up, strawberries and, everything that we eat. And this idea that, we're so advanced in terms of our technology, but we don't know how to grow something,
Wow.
Yeah, I've been really thinking about what does it look like to have farms that our people can work, where our people can, have some level of being able to have businesses, but then also being able to have a way to feed ourselves, and in ways that are very we remember because of our memory, but also that are so futuristic, and even thinking about like our seeds and how the technology around farming. And so that's what I'm thinking about right now, and I know that I can handle it, and I'm trying to get my weight up.
I think that is so critical. We, if you ask me about farming, I don't know anything. And just since being in California, have taken an affinity towards farmers market because they're so prevalent out here, and learning and distinguishing between farmers market and of course supermarkets. And I've learned really some great, interesting things. And it's interesting how you connect what has happened with the pandemic and COVID into pulling this sobering reality. Like, what? As a person, as an individual, I am so fixed on these things already being provided for me that I don't necessarily know how to create or retrieve those things separate of this system that I'm a part of. So how do I step back from all of that in this space, and create what does that look like? As simple as, if I needed fruit, right, and couldn't go nowhere, do I have what I need? Do I have the wherewithal to even figure out what that looks like? And then when you look at the statistics, this is like great information because it speaks to the work that you do. It speaks to the work that a lot of community organizers do that are really like planted in this work and helping our communities, specifically Black and Brown communities. We acknowledge that there's this system, but we also have to empower one another to know that we also have the power, and the spiritual aptitude really to create this system that our people or our family can live off of. And I think when we think about entrepreneurship and we think about even returning to the soil, when we think about farming, irrigation, even when we just think about of Black and Brown communities, what does that really mean, especially when it comes to our futuristic generations in a time where everything is shut down? Now what? I even think about, now we're in this debacle with our schools, right? And I'm not necessarily worried about Madison. And me and my mom just talked about this. My mom is a retired educator, and so am I. So she gonna be good. Got a godmama that's an educator. But I think about those kids that have no connection to individuals. And I'm not relying on virtual teaching. I'm not going to rely on virtual learning. I'm just not, because there are some teachers, and I applaud the work that they do. They're just not prepared, right? And so I don't think about the Madisons. I think about those students that will be greatly impacted, because this year is going to be very interesting. And that's not saying that there was just so much being done in the classrooms, but with what we know about the inequities already in education and now. And so as a community, have we really realized, right, the disservice when we as a generation of leaders have not been forward thinking, right? Around what does this now look like with our future, with our students, with our young adults, even with our seniors, right? What is our role as leaders? What is our role as individuals? What is our role as the church?
Yeah.
And outside of this bigger system, right? The system of grocery stores, the system of food stamps, the system of education, the system of what we consider to be justice or economic justice or lack thereof. What will we have come out of this with if we have not learned how to create a system that's more prone to the needs of our people in our communities? And that could be whether that's entrepreneurship, right? That could be educational opportunities. That could be, to your point, a return back to the soil, or return, or even an understanding of the power that we have, right? Right? So I think that's huge. It's so much you said that can be unpacked. Because I think if we do not come out of this with some newer ways, right?
Forms by this moment, even that's why I absolutely love, and I'll keep saying it, because I think also when you're in the practice of affirming yourself and affirming your life and your vision, that's what you speak to other people, we stay getting on the phone, and the first 5 minutes I'm just running it, and you like, sister, tell me why, how, and I'm just like, yeah, because that's just what's flowing, that's what's coming out, And I think even for the church, right, and for organizations like mine, that are doing movement building, kingdom building, whatever you're building, if you're not transformed by this moment, you're not building one. And if you're not transformed by this moment and thinking about, for us, it's beyond the building, right? For the church, beyond the building, how are you reaching people, right? Same thing with schools, which is what you just said. And for us, it's like, our job is really around leadership building, right? And being able to build leaders who have a consciousness around, themselves, their people, their neighborhood, their rights. And so, this moment is we have got to be transformed. It has to happen. And if you have yet to be transformed, then I think this book is a great place to start, and I'll keep plugging it. But also, you haven't missed the moment yet, but don't get caught not coming out of this moment.
Yeah, with
Still
something.
being the same person. That's just, and still having the same relationships in the same way, right? Whether it be, with your family, whether it be, with friends or whoever, right? Like we have got to transform and like really get our weight up.
That was an interesting, that is a great, I mean, the fact that you have used that affirmation is and it really transcends across the board. It's such a relevant conversation that needs to happen. Um and I wrestle with it because I wonder how much, believe it or not, I do have wrestles. I wrestle with how much agency I have where in my current context. And you're right, it literally starts with a vision, the word of God, and then a revelation from God around that word, and begin speaking it. Like, and to Sasha's point, you literally have to shift your mind to believe I have whatever God has gifted me with to create. We were created to create, right? And so we all have some level of creativity, whether we tap into it or not. The problem becomes when we don't.
If it does not say creative, or like creator,
Right.
You're not the creator, but if it doesn't, if you don't display that in everything you're doing, like you still need some alignment. You still need to, be transformed. And so I think that's the main thing. When I was growing up in the church, I was actually in the 9th grade and could not read. And this is like, real. So we're not worried about the Madisons of the world, but you ought to be worried about the Mary D's of the world who don't have.
That's good.
Who can read to them, who can show them, phonics, whatever, all these very basic things.
That's
like
good.
The Mary D's of the world, it was a problem. But God, and
that's good.
Yeah, and
that's good.
It's just something that I got my original point, but
that's good. Let me say, you should not be worried about the Madisons of the world, but the Mary D's of the world are kids that cannot, at the time or in their current state, read or function.
Oh, right, but I always knew I had purpose, right? Because I went to church. So, like, people will tell you, like, you don't know how to read, right? I mean, you go to children's church, you just cutting up, and but the affirmation of you're set apart, right? I knew that from a kid. I was set apart. I was like, now to do what? I don't know.
I don't know. Right.
I'm a kingdom builder. Well, it's no coincidence that now I'm a movement builder.
Right. Yes. So those early affirmations.
Yes. And so it's so critical that we're speaking life into each other, but then also life into our kids. So, me and you will probably be characterized as like, if you need a hype woman, like, here we are, right? If you need someone who will gas you up, here we are.
Right.
Someone who's going to, tell you great things about you, and who's going to be like, if we like somebody, we like somebody, and we just crazy about them. Right? We just, like, you can't tell us nothing about that person.
Listen, yes, facts.
Yeah, and so to me, it's like, it's also a practice, it's a gift, but it's also a practice of like learning how to be crazy about somebody, learning how to see the good, learning how to see, the all, right? I can have all things. Learning how to see the all is a practice. It's a gift, but I also think it's something you can develop, and it starts really with the power of affirmations and the power of being able to speak life.
And I know we got to wrap up. This is good for me because I see such a huge difference, but being out here in the South, right? In the South you have your like Southern hospitality thing, and out here is not so hospitable.
Don't do us that
in some cases, right? And so, which is probably why I gravitate to, some of my church family and those that have like that kind of spirit, because I've met people that have told me like I didn't grow up like that. I'm like, that's such a tragedy, right? Like, and I didn't grow up having people that loved on me or encouraged me and like, Sean, you're just so extra. And I'm like, I'm not. Like, you ain't never had nobody like speak life every day. And to your point, did not have the maturity at the time to understand what was being spoken over me. But to your point, I grew up in that space where, which is like why today was so profound, because something like a today would have happened back at home, right? My friends or my family would have went all out, right? To do something. We celebrate each other's wins. Why not, right? And we drink over our losses, right? And so the reality of it is, when you're looking at context, and when you're coming across people, and when we're in a space where not everyone even knows how to receive affirmations, and it literally slows down, I would argue, the flow, because I gotta now first convince you that what I'm saying over you or just at you is something that's believable. Like, the power that's in my mouth is real, right? And so, because a person may or may not be acclimated or familiar with that, you have to first do that work, because there's a guard, there's hard-heartedness, there's so many things. And I wonder, come on, K Boogie, here go our future, y'all. I wonder how further we could be. Come on.
Yeah,
I wonder how further we could be as a community, as a body of people, if we didn't have to do all that pre-work, right? And tear down those walls. And like you say, when you and I come on the scene, we have to fight through the minutia of, wait a minute, hold up. It takes 6 months just for people to be like, no, she is legit. No, she is authentic. Like, you got to like you got to prove first before you can even do the work of the affirmations to the manifestation. I think we've seen that in the body of Christ. I think we've seen that in our organizations. I know we've seen that in leadership, where, because to your point, not everyone's mind has shifted to, I can have it all, right? There are so many, and I thought you painted the picture well, based on our culture, how we were brought up. We were just always taught, you got your little bit, you need to go in a corner, sit down somewhere. And so the fact that Mary comes on the scene and dare have a dream and dare have a vision and say, put them little bitty pennies down, we finna now seek after our rightful inheritance, because I done read the book and what it really says, right? You need to drop them pennies. You now have to fight to open up the fist of our loved ones, our community members, our colleagues, because we've been socialized to really believe, counter to what that affirmation, I cannot have it all. And almost to my mother's question, even if I do say out of my mouth, I can have it all, I haven't taken the time or done the work to define, what does all even look like?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I think, and I will say, that God has allowed me to see manifestation in certain areas. And, in other areas, we're still working on it, right? Yeah. And so in other places, I actually have to do the work of affirming the all, of doing the work of what is all, because I still don't see it, or I still don't believe it.
Yeah.
Right. But I know, like, when it comes to, work, when it comes to, we built this organization from the ground up. It wasn't something that somebody else was running before. And so those things, that comes easy to me. I can believe, right? Because I've seen it, I've done it, I'm in it, right? But I think in other areas where there's more hurt, or where there's more baggage, right? Or where there's more of a history, it takes more work to actually believe, or it takes more work to see the all. And that could be, in your family, that could be in your finances, that could be in your health, that could be in love, that could be, whatever, you're working on. But yeah, I do think that because we show up in this way doesn't mean that everything, we have it all in all places. But I think believing you can have it all in step one.
Yeah. Yeah. Final thoughts. That's good. There's so much to unpack with that. As I go through the journey with, I was just thinking the same thing, Sasha. I go through the journey with my young adults currently. More so my young adults, and my heart grieves for them just because I am always intrigued by their curiosity. They really, some of the young adults have really gravitated towards me, and it keeps me in perspective, because the reality of it is, as my mom said earlier, the previous generation has to teach the next, and so there's a great responsibility that I feel, right, to these young adults that now watch me and come to me, right, to live this life according to this book, right, so that hopefully the mindset and the paradigms can begin to shift, and they can begin speaking a life of their own abundance and their rightful inheritance, and claim their rightful places. And as you and I both know, being educators in our own regard, I would argue that the best form of teaching is modeling, right? And I think sometimes when I watch my peers, and I'm like, do you not understand the great burden we have? Like, are you kidding me? Like, why are you like that, right? And you have to dial it back. But I'm always in question, because I think that pushes me even the more. To your point, not only is this about the Mary D's and the Madisons, but it's about that young sister or that young brother who, whether we know it or not, or whether we're cognizant or not, is watching, just like you and I at some point was watching them older mothers at the church, right?
I'm still watching.
We still watching, right?
Yeah, who was on the line? What was
Mother Turner on the line? We got several mothers that's on the line, and they know them my girls, right? I respect them not just because of their age and their status in the church, but that there is still this notion of, I'm watching to learn, I'm watching to mimic, I'm watching because, again, there is something there. If we can connect these dots, there is something there that can be passed on from them to me, and then from me to the next. And that doesn't mean I may always get it right, and I may not be all as polished and poised, right?
You don't have to be, and I don't think
yes.
So I feel like we just need to dead that now and never actually think that that's the thing, right? Because authenticity. I
was just gonna say, it goes back to that authenticity piece and finding your voice. And what I can appreciate, and I can say this really about me and most mothers of a church have had great relationships, because I think God has allowed me, even in my bigness, to still be small enough to glean. And then he's connected me with mothers who've allowed my bigness, but also realized I was small enough to learn and didn't mind imparting. And so I see myself as that to someone else. And it may not, again, to be to someone that's like a Madison, but it could be to that young sister. It could be to an older woman, right? That didn't get whatever, and that sees a light in this little sister, or sees a light and a fire in this younger sister. Like, you know what? I missed that, but I sure want some of it, because as long as I'm breathing, there's more life to live. So it's not even about necessarily the age. There's some things. Right, it's full circle, right? And so I always sit with that, and sometimes it creates a burden with it, because I'm like, again, I don't know who's going to pick up this book and flip to day 1 or day 10, and it literally saves their life. I don't know that. So I have to be intentional about the words that I feel like I'm hearing from God that are now penned, because I don't know who's on the recipient end. And I believe if we would all adopt that model and adopt that paradigm shift, I have to walk a certain way. I have to live a certain way. I have to exude the fullness of who I've been created to be, because the recipient of that may be somebody that's needing to see how to do this, how to walk this thing out without losing their goddamn own mind, and still do it for the glory of God.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that you brought up all of that, because I think that's huge. That's the responsibility of this. This as much as we've had fun with the journey, this is not for entertainment. There's a huge burden that comes with living the lives that God has called us to live. And the reality of it is, 20 years from now, we don't know if we'll then become the legends or the history makers, or again, some young sister or brother or older sister, brother be like, it was because I encountered a Mary on the organizing trail, or she came to my city, or I heard this young woman speak, or she came to my community and she empowered me to return to the soil that I can now eat good of the land today. It was
Right.
because I heard from the affirmation in her mouth, her vision in 2020, that now in 2024 or 2030, my family can live off the fruit, because I had an encounter with this woman who already had begun to do the work of a paradigm shift and wasn't stingy with her life lesson, that later turned into an affirmation that she spoke, that now we're living as a result of that manifestation.
Let's go. The future feels very open,
Yeah.
and also very right now, in that the
Yeah.
things that we do right now matter. And so, yeah, I have no other look. We done chopped it up and chopped it
Yeah.
down. We good. I am so grateful for you. I'm just, when I think about what a woman of God, what, who she is, and what qualities, I'm thinking about you, Sean, and I'm thinking, and it's, I think also for many people who, for whatever reason, are looking for, I think, just leadership. We're so thirsty for leadership right now. We're so thirsty for leadership that feels good, right? But that's also speaking truth, right? That's speaking the word, that's speaking truth, that's speaking from experience, that doesn't, every single time that I talk to you, even, if it's something that's like, I've come to you with some very radically, you a vault. So keep being a vault. But where I'm just like, man, it's bad. I never walk away. I walk away with work that I have to do, but I don't walk away with shame. And that's the type of leadership that we need for this time right now. That's the type of leadership that matters right now. And so I salute you. I'm, grateful for you, and I pray that God continue to bless you and to give you the courage and the relentlessness, in the same way that you've had this relentlessness since I met you. Like, this is my path. This is what I will do. I will serve God. I mean, I actually have not seen that from many people, and so I'm grateful. I am. I don't know how else to say it other than, like, I'm happy to do what I can to help build alongside you, because I trust you and I trust your vision. So yeah, I love you, my girl.